Should we talk to you?
Yes, sure.
What is your name?
Konstantin Igorevich Vanin.
Date of birth?
December 22nd, 1988.
Where are you from?
From the city of Slavyansk.
Do you give your voluntary consent for the publication of our conversation?
Yes.
What were you convicted of and for how long?
I was sentenced to 8 years under Article 114, Section 2, Part 3.
Something else.
Well, even prior to that, on September 1st, a search was conducted in my apartment. They seized and discovered 18 rounds of ammunition and a VOG grenade launcher. Well, according to this article, I was given a 1-year suspended sentence. I cooperated with the investigation. Indeed, I found all these, let's say, spoils of war at the training ground. I had no intention of using them for their intended purpose. They were on my shelves solely as souvenirs.
Did you find a weapon at the training ground?
No, there was no gun.
What happened?
18 rounds.
Just cartridges?
Yes.
Are you a physics teacher?
Yes.
Where did you teach?
At Malinovskaya Secondary School. This is a rural school.
How long?
The last training lasted 6 months.
Have you engaged in ideological discussions with your students?
No way.
About politics?
No. I absolutely did not have any conversations with anyone about politics.
It just happens.
No.
So, in the essence of your accusation, what can you say? Do you agree or not?
I, of course, disagree with the accusation, as I did not perform the actions attributed to me.
At all?
No changes needed.
May I see your file?
Certainly.
Yes?
Yes.
Sire, we are discussing cartridges, specifically 16 of them. It's noted that these cartridges were seized. You have confessed to your guilt here.
Certainly.
Is this a separate statement about the cartridges, but a different one for that article? So, did you plead guilty?
Yes.
Are you saying that you didn't commit these actions?
We essentially struck a deal with the intelligence agencies, and that's all.
Well, in that case, you should assert that the special services somehow coerced you. A person needs to somehow justify the fact that they confessed to a crime they supposedly did not commit.
Well, yes.
And?
Let's just say there was an agreement between us.
A pact?
Yes, we agreed.
I address the audience. If it suddenly appears to you that they simply want you to consent to an 8-year prison sentence, then that's a poor agreement. I'm being straightforward about this. I don't necessarily believe that it was just a transaction, but it's strange. I suppose there's no sense in questioning your motives for your actions if you're going to deny them.
Yes.
Then let's discuss some general topics. Who does Crimea belong to?
Crimea? De facto or de jure?
De facto.
De facto? Well, the currency used there is the Russian ruble, and the flag is Russian. The license plates on the cars are Russian. The people hold Russian citizenship, and their passports are also Russian.
Does everyone have a Russian passport? Many Ukrainian passports have been kept.
Most of the people I spoke with possess Russian passports. Legally, Crimea is Ukrainian.
I understand. And from a moral standpoint?
From a moral perspective, I agreed with the viewpoint that Crimea belongs to the Crimeans, as one individual stated. The people voiced their stance.
This person has already retracted this statement. He holds an unequivocally pro-Ukrainian stance. Crimea is undeniably Ukrainian. He supports Ukraine and humorously criticizes Russians whenever he can. Did you mean Osip?
No, I think Morgenstern said that.
This is a highly authoritative opinion for Ukrainians. Every Ukrainian is obligated to heed what Morgenstern said on this matter.
He said a phrase that I liked, and I think that it is essentially correct.
Do you support the annexation of Crimea?
I'm undecided about this.
Tell me.
On the one hand, yes, certainly. But on the other hand, no. Why not? Because this is annexation. This is the deployment of troops. It is the destabilization of Ukraine. I am Ukrainian. I am solely a citizen of Ukraine, and in my view, this is a loss of territory, an annexation by the Russians. Therefore, to me, it is unjust. This pertains to the moral aspect of the matter. Conversely, I visited Crimea frequently when it was still a part of Ukraine. From about 3 years of age to 13 years of age. I spent my childhood summers in Crimea. It's a fantastic resort with wonderful people. Everything is good. Everything is fine. However, I haven't visited Crimea for a long time. In 2014, during the time of Maidan, when our city was already filled with militia, I prepared myself and traveled to Crimea. I stayed there for 5 years. Over the course of 5 years, I have witnessed truly significant changes in terms of infrastructure improvement, quality of life enhancement, and in all other aspects.
So, did the significant influx of tourists make everyone feel better and more comfortable?
The tourist scenario is also intricate. While Crimea was part of Ukraine, it was open to all, reflecting the Ukrainian living standards. However, after its incorporation into Russia, the improved living standards made it less affordable for many to visit, particularly Ukrainians whose average income hasn't seen much growth. Conversely, for Russians, it has turned into a more appealing vacation spot.
What do you mean by improving the standard of living?
Salaries and, for instance, purchasing power.
Has the purchasing power significantly increased?
Well, as far as I know, yes.
How has it manifested?
The correlation between price and salary.
Yes?
Yes. The residents of Crimea had specific salaries. However, with the change in government and currency, salaries and prices have naturally undergone relative changes. The salaries were reasonable. The standard of living has improved. I'm not just saying this for myself. I'm speaking on behalf of the people I interacted with, lived with, and was directly in contact with in Crimea. These are my acquaintances, my friends.
People who used to travel to Crimea?
No. The residents themselves have directly benefited. Taxes have been reduced, and the cost of utilities has decreased.
The truth is, many people in Crimea relied heavily on tourism and visitors for their livelihood.
I visited the city of Simferopol. This is a city that isn't heavily reliant on tourism. It has its own, so to speak, infrastructure. Yes, coastal cities do depend on tourism. Yalta, Alushta. In other words, resort towns that are directly dependent on the season.
So, have some areas in Crimea improved while others have deteriorated?
Naturally.
Did the situation worsen in tourist towns where the locals' purchasing power depended on tourism?
In general, yes.
However, in large cities like Simferopol, which are not reliant on tourism, conditions have improved. Wages have increased, utility costs have decreased, and people have begun to afford more purchases.
Yes.
I understand you. Now I'll switch to the Russian radio. Hello, my name is Daria. I live in Yalta, and I've decided to share my impressions with you. I'm a local. It's a tough life, guys, and there's nothing we can do about it. The truth is that the 2014 voting was a complete sham. Nobody went to vote. I'm telling you this as a local resident. We've been here since 1928. Luckily, I was living in St. Petersburg before the pandemic hit, and I've now been in Yalta for a year. I must say the situation here is quite disordered, with rampant looting going on. Everyone is unhappy. I can't say that I know anyone who would claim to be satisfied.
Excuse me, could we go back to the beginning? Did you vote back in 2014?
No, certainly none of the Yalta residents went to vote. Those who worked at the polling stations, these girls who were looking to earn some money, they expressed the sentiment that it was all a sham.
Good morning.
Hello, my name is Sasha.
Sasha, where are you from?
I am a resident of Ekaterinburg, but I have been living in Crimea for 5 years with my daughter's family. I used to visit Crimea regularly for about 20 years, so I'm quite familiar with the realities there.
Which Crimea is superior, Ukrainian or Russian? You are now live on air.
Undoubtedly, Crimea is better under Ukraine. I will explain this shortly.
Good morning.
Good afternoon. I'm Ruslan from Kerch, Crimea.
Hello, Kerch.
Good afternoon. I'm viewing your comparative analysis program. Yes, one of the methods to understand reality is through comparison. You are inquiring whether life has improved or deteriorated. You have no idea how bad life has become.
This is echo of Moscow. Russia. Even Poklonskaya discusses the fact that the hospitals have not improved, but rather deteriorated, particularly in terms of provision. And many other aspects have indeed worsened in Crimea. So, there are differing views on the standard of living in Crimea. However, as a Ukrainian, you believe that it's wrong from every perspective, both morally and legally. Is the annexation of Crimea incorrect?
Yes.
Did you attempt to seek employment in any other Ukrainian city, apart from Slavyansk, before you moved to Crimea?
At that time in Kiev, I had friends who informed me that job opportunities would become scarce in the near future. It was just after the Maidan.
So, you're responsible for installing internet cables, right? Am I understanding your job correctly?
Yes.
This work was in demand before 2014, during 2014, and after 2014.
Yes. I know it's a high-demand job.
The installers never stop working. Have you experienced it yourself, or just heard someone's opinion?
I'm telling you that I left when the militia was already in Sloviansk. I tried to find a place where I would have at least some acquaintances, so that I could work and live peacefully and protect myself.
I see.
Perhaps if I had been a bit older, it wouldn't have been so challenging for me to relocate to a different city without any acquaintances, connections, and so forth. But at that time, I needed some sort of support.
How old were you then? What's up, roughly?
Well, about 25 years.
25. What is your marital status?
I'm not married and I have no children.
I see. Getting back to the topic of Crimea, how long were you employed there? Can you tell me about your general responsibilities or activities there?
First, I spent a season working in children's health camps. After that, I secured a job at a paintball club. That is, the season had ended, and I returned home.
Slavyansk?
Yeah, it was work-related.
Was Gherkin driven away at that point?
Yes, it was exactly a month after I left. I came back to the city, asked my friends about their work situation, and there was absolutely nothing. However, at that time, I was offered a job as a paintball instructor in Simferopol. And that was it. It was mostly seasonal work. Well, I didn't complain about the salary. I always had work. I switched jobs from time to time, because again, they were seasonal positions. And I visited Yalta. In other words, I toured around Crimea. It was an enjoyable time for me, especially because I was traveling.
How long did it last?
5 years.
You've been a paintball instructor for 5 years, excluding your first year?
Yeah, about 4 years.
First the camp job and then the paintball job?
Yes.
What happened next?
Well, then I returned home, to Slavyansk. I just wanted to go home. I arrived in Slavyansk. Then I was offered a job in Moscow. I went there for a month and came back. Then I was offered a job in Poland. I went to Poland for a couple of months.
What did you do in Moscow and in Poland?
In Moscow, I was offered a position to manage a newly established Italian pizzeria. Prior to this, I held various jobs. I have experience as a waiter, bartender, and host. In other words, I generally have good rapport with people.
What's wrong with this job? Or did you upset someone else?
No, let's just say it was a disagreement with a superior.
Have you had a Ukrainian passport all this time?
Yes.
Were you treated normally with a Ukrainian passport?
Yes. Every 3 months I crossed the border. Because,
Wasn't there some sort of law prohibiting us from going there? Or did it not impact you at all?
well, I guess so, but,
And didn't anyone tell you anything?
I was questioned twice at the checkpoint. They asked when I had left. I told them it was a couple of weeks ago. They asked if I was aware that I had to remain within Ukrainian territory for 90 days as well. Well, the first time I was not informed. They wagged their finger at me and warned me not to make the same mistake next time.
Is this from the Ukrainian side?
No, in Russia.
Did anyone from the Ukrainian side say anything to you?
No, it's nothing.
In what year was your last trip to Moscow?
To Moscow?
Yes.
In 2019.
So, was it okay to go there without any problem? And what about Poland?
I performed facade insulation there for 2 months.
Didn't it work out? Didn't you like it?
Overall, it was a typical job with a standard income. However, we were informed that there would be no work for a while due to poor weather and lack of orders, so everyone left. After that, I ended up in Slavyansk.
And then you started teaching?
No, I began my teaching career in early 2022. Until that time, I was working from home. You could say I was self-employed.
You didn't do anything?
No, I've also been working, specifically in the cryptocurrency industry. Security systems, cybersecurity. The work was primarily conducted online.
In cybersecurity, as far as I'm aware, people earn a decent income.
Yes.
Why did you suddenly decide to become a teacher?
Indeed, it was a job close to my heart. I mean, working with computer systems is one thing, but interacting with children, with people, in a team, well, that's something else.
Additionally, social guarantees from the state.
Well,
Vacation and experience.
honestly, I hadn't really looked at it that way.
Just to socialize.
Yes.
What made the Ukrainian security service suspect you? I can't seem to locate the context.
Around November 11th. I had realized earlier that the city wasn't particularly peaceful, and I really had nothing to do here. Absolutely. I started abusing alcohol.
It happens.
I also began encountering issues with my online work because the Donetsk and Luhansk regions were, to put it mildly, blacklisted. So I decided to move to Crimea. I had to cross the contact line, and I chose to do it in Bakhmut. There, I was apprehended by counterintelligence and subsequently detained.
In essence, you fled from the war.
In a broad sense, yes.
You escaped to a territory under the control of occupation authorities from the actions of those very same occupation authorities. Do you condemn Russia for its aggression towards Ukraine?
On the one hand, yes. On the other hand, no.
No?
because it's not exactly a war between Russia and Ukraine. Well, this is, again, my perspective, my interpretation, my comprehension of all this.
Whose war is this?
Indeed, a geopolitical war is unfolding here, representing the clash of interests between Western civilization and Russia.
Did someone from the West provoke Putin to launch a missile attack on Ukraine?
In general, yes.
How?
Massive arms deliveries to Ukraine. Once again, expansion of NATO.
What can you cite as specific instances of massive arms shipments, or Ukraine moving closer to NATO prior to a full-scale Russian invasion?
Javelin shipments, anti-tank weapon shipments, military training.
Okay?
In the European Union,
Okay?
as well as agreements to join NATO and the European Union.
Who wanted to join the NATO bloc?
Well, they haven't agreed yet, but Ukraine has submitted an application.
So what?
As far as I know.
So let's do the math. You are correct about Javelin. By the way, did you know that in this agreement for the supply of Javelin, it was stated that they are not to be used in Donbass, in the eastern part of Ukraine?
No, I don't. I'm aware that there were arms shipments.
Okay, so Javelin. Nah, there were some supplies, but those supplies were, well, minuscule.
Well, I can't argue with you. I haven't really been following this whole thing.
I'm not trying to argue with you, but you just mentioned massive arms deliveries to Ukraine. Yet you only referred to the Javelins. Let's assume there were 10 of them.
I just know that there were arms shipments. People were being trained and so on.
So we could have attacked first? That's the theory. So, here's a comparison of the military statistics, detailing what Ukraine has versus what Russia has. You can read and see what we should have attacked with, and most importantly, the massive arms shipments. Out of all these statistics, 99% of the weapons that Ukraine had were Ukrainian-made. You can recite our helicopters and theirs, our airplanes and theirs, our boats and theirs. Well, these are actual statistics. You can verify them. Where are the large-scale arms shipments? Show me a provocation based on those statistics. Special purpose aviation. We have 5 units. Russia has 132 units. I believe we've addressed the issue of massive arms shipments. That is, what you perceived as massive arms deliveries was merely Ukraine's regular desire to procure some weapons. However, in comparison to Russia, it was insignificant.
Russian language.
Protection of the Russian-speaking community. Who has violated your rights due to the Russian language, and how has it manifested?
For instance, in Lviv,
Uh-huh.
the local population criticized for not communicating and not speaking in Russian.
When were you in Lviv?
In 2013,
What were your actions inside?
we went out with the school kids to see the sights.
A field trip?
Yeah, school field trip.
How long did you stay in Lviv?
About a week.
How many times a week do you experience humiliation, and in what manner?
Well, a couple of times. Once was in the cafeteria.
What did they tell you?
A schoolgirl asked for buckwheat and goulash, so she was served buckwheat and goulash, and then she inquired if she could have some gravy. She was informed that there was no gravy available.
Okay.
We were trailing this girl, but when we spoke in Ukrainian, we were offered sauce. And also, Somewhere on the street. That's amusing. Yes, I concur. And somewhere on the street, we were called names.
Is that it?
Yes.
Are you suggesting that Russia should launch an all-out attack on Ukraine? Obliterating entire cities? Are you serious? I asked you if you endorsed Russian aggression, and you responded on one hand, no.
Sure.
Your arguments about massive arms supplies, NATO expansion, provocation by Western countries, and protection of Russian speakers are nonsensical. Was it difficult for you to order gravy in Ukrainian in Lviv?
No, I told you it's fine.
Well, ask the other side to trade with you. That's what you want, isn't it?
Yes.
That's the main purpose of our conversation.
Yes.
All of this is just rhetoric. You've pointed out the challenges Russian speakers encounter. Incidentally, Putin pledged to safeguard individuals like you who are supposedly at a disadvantage, such as not receiving certain benefits. Contact us and we will pick you up.
Take me away.
It's funny, isn't it?
I don't know.
Do you know anyone in Russia?
Yes.
Apart from friends, do you have any relatives?
Some distant relatives.
Generally, I understand that you have many friends in Russia who could advocate for you. Perhaps write to someone to get you recognized.
My relatives moved to Belgorod.
Here we go.
The war began.
They will contact someone to take you away from here.
Yes.
Well, I would just like this to have some practical result. Because we are prepared to hand you over at any moment and retrieve our man. Our people, who are absolutely innocent, are being held there. They have done nothing wrong. They merely left Mariupol through the so-called Green Corridor, a route that was only given to these people one way, without the right to choose. They are now in jail simply because they refuse to accept a Russian passport and participate in Russian propaganda. And we would gladly exchange any one of these men for you today or tomorrow. Is there anything else you would like to add?
No.
Well, that's it then.